Can you all see my screen? Nomasonto, can you see? Donay? Yes. Okay, perfect. Cool. So I'm going to try and share it so that it looks like a presentation slide. There we go. Perfect. So I've already gone through who I am. That's me there. And then I'm going to go through the first thing, which is CV. So how I've split it up, I'm going to speak through CV, the important sections that you need to be aware of as you're constructing your CV. Then I'm going to go through into interview tips, virtual interview tips, and then take you through how to get into a top law firm. So from a CV perspective, guys, one thing that I think is always important for you guys to be aware of is how you structure your CV is absolutely important, in terms of how it's received by the recruiter. Know that a recruiter typically takes about 7 seconds just scanning over a CV. And in order for us to really get a sense of, is this a CV I want to spend some more time on or not? And there are a couple of things that are so important for you to be mindful of as you construct your CV so that you know that you are grabbing the recruiter's attention from day one. So what I want you guys to know here, I'm going to be speaking about the important sections that you guys need to include in a CV. But like I say, I have an entire video on CV writing, an entire video on the perfect template. So those are things that you guys can go into detail on a bit later after the presentation. So from a CV perspective, generally, guys, as graduates at a university, there's not a lot of work experience that you have on your CV. So the way in which you structure your CV is actually very important. We typically like to see one-page CVs because I think depending on the template that you use, you can really get it quite down and concise into being a one-page CV, right? So depending on how that is structured. A lot of you, as you'll know, when you apply to a place like Bowmans, we use a platform called Leaply, and Leaply is where you really go onto the website and you construct your CV yourself. So you create a profile for yourself, you add your picture, you put in your bio, and you put in all the different areas of experience you have, where you've studied, what you've studied. All of that gets constructed on the actual website. And that really helps us on our end because we're able to pick up on key things that we're looking for by just looking at a standard template. But for those of you, not every law firm, right? Not every law firm uses Leaply. So for those of you that don't, I think keeping your CV quite concise and on one page is really going to be so important for you. So these are the sections that I think are important to include. I get a lot of questions from people just around whether to put a picture or don't put a picture. Me personally, I absolutely love seeing pictures on a CV, and that's because I really get a sense of who it is I'm reading about by looking at your picture. But if you're going to decide to have a picture, right, it's so important for you to make sure your picture is professional, to make sure that you look like it's a professional picture. So you're not putting on shades, you don't have a crazy hairstyle or colorful hair, particularly if you're applying to a grad program, right? And you're applying to a corporate place. Make sure that it's a professional picture, make sure you're smiling, and make sure that it's up close, right? I don't want to see a full body picture because then it defeats the purpose of having a picture there. So just like I have in the actual, in the actual presentation, you see that that's kind of the type of headshot, head and shoulder shots that you should be having on a CV. Now, those of you that decide not to have a CV, not to have a picture, it's absolutely not a train smash. It's really up to you whether you want to put your picture on or not. But if you are going to put a picture, that's really how it needs to look. For me, pictures are always great and I love to see the people that I'm reading about. But like I say, it's really up to you. The next section that's important to include in your CV is a professional summary. Now, in your professional summary, what you're really doing here is really 3-4 sentences that really speak to who you are, where you studied, what you studied, why you studied it, and why you're keen to apply to this particular company. This is where it's important, guys. I always say to students, when you're putting together a CV, make sure that you're constructing it for the company that you're applying for. Don't just have a generic CV and you just send that CV out to everyone. Make sure that you're trying to construct it to speak to the company that you're actually applying for. And that's what's going to help in those 6-7 seconds that a recruiter is looking at it. If it speaks to the company, that you are actually applying to, it will grab attention, right? So in your professional summary, you introduce yourself, you say what you're studying, where you're studying, why, what some of your key strengths are particularly, and also why did you study it, right? So if you're studying law, why did I study law, right? I studied law because this is really how I want my career to go because of A, B, C, D, and I'm so keen and really looking forward to being, invited for an interview at Bowmans, because Bowmans is, the top law firm in the country, and I really want to be associated with prestigious law firm. Whatever the case may be, you obviously need to do a lot of research in order for you to construct that properly, but I'm giving you a sense of what that professional summary needs to look like. So in your professional summary, guys, you're not putting, I come from a family of, 5 people, I'm the youngest in the family, I've got 2 dogs, and so you're not putting personal details there. It's a professional summary. Who am I as a professional? And because you're a graduate, there's not a lot that you can speak to in terms of years of experience. So you speak to what you're studying, where you're studying, and why you're studying it. The next thing that's important to always have on your CV is contact details. And there's really only 3 main things that you need to be putting there. I see a lot of people still putting marital status and whether they've got a driver's license and their ID numbers and so much information on there, which is not always necessary to put on the actual CV. So on your CV, we need to see your email address, we need to see your mobile, your cell number, and your address. The address really just helps in terms of understanding your location. You may be applying for a job and maybe we've got opportunity in the Cape Town office, but you're based in Joburg. So we know that when we engage with you, we also reiterating, this is a Cape Town base. Are you happy to relocate? So that's what that helps us with there. So make sure your email and your cell number, guys, are correct, right? I can't help you if it's incorrect, right? So there's a lot of people that will have 1 digit too many, 1 digit short. Make sure that you're paying attention to detail when you put together your CV, because those small things are going to be the things that really stand in the way of whether we're able to contact you or not. So that's what needs to go under your contact details section. Next thing that needs to go into your CV is your educational history. Now, what I speak about here when I say educational background, typically for you guys, because you're graduates, you start from high school, right? So you're going to say high school, this is the name of the high school, this is the year that I matriculated in, right? So you'll say high school 2012 or 2010, whatever the case may be. Whenever it is that you finished your high school, you put that year there, and then you move on to your undergraduate degree, right? So if you're just doing a straight LLB, that will be the next thing that comes onto your CV. You'll say that you're doing an LLB from University of Pretoria, and this is the year that you have been doing it. So if you started your LLB in 2019 and you're going to finish in 2023, then that's what you put, 2019 to 2023 LLB qualification, right? Always start with your most recent. So if you're someone that's doing a postgraduate, you'll have your postgraduate first. Then after that, you will have your undergraduate. Then the last thing that you'll have is your high school. Okay, so that's what needs to go under educational history. What I would suggest you put here as well, if there are any key highlights or achievements in that particular year, not a long list, guys, your top 2 or 1 achievement in that year, you can put it directly under the high school, right? Or I mean, under the qualification that you've spoken about. So you could say doing an honors and postgrad LLB, University of Pretoria, achieved Dean's List 2019 to 2020, whatever the case may be. So you could put it under there as well. Okay. So that's what you need to put in your educational history. Don't put a list of all the subjects you did in high school. It's not necessary. We're going to ask you for your ID. We're going to ask you for a copy of your matric certificate. So we will see that stuff on there. These are some of the things that make your CV a lot longer than it needs to be. So make sure that you're just putting name, qualification, name of school, the year, and if there's a key achievement you want to highlight, you can do that as well in this section. After that, you put employment history. So for those of you obviously that have not worked at all, what you're going to put under employment history or extracurricular activities is what you could also call it, are some of the activities that you've done at high school level, right? Have you been part of Mood Society? Have you been part of the LSC? Have you done some volunteering kind of work? Do you work part-time? Some of you work part-time on weekends, whether you're waitressing or whatever the case may be. This is the section where you're going to put that, right? So you need to highlight some of the things that you're doing at varsity to really give us a sense of what else you are doing outside of just studying, right? So the educational background talks about your academics, the employment history or extracurricular activities really is going to talk to the things that you're doing at university level. Then after that, you could have a section of skills and abilities. So skills is really, when we speak about skills, we're speaking about what are some of the things that you are really good at that maybe you do even just outside of your studying, right? What are some of the key skills that you may have both professionally or technically from a legal perspective? So some of you may have worked at the law clinic. What are some of the key skills that you've gained from there? But typically from a graduate perspective, we're looking at really interpersonal skills, right? Are you someone that's great with communication? Are you a team player? Are you someone that is meticulous and detail orientated, right? So you need to really look at yourself and get a sense of what are the skills that I think I'm really strong at? This is where you put your strengths in. What are some of the skills that I'm really strong at that I'd like to be able to put here? So guys, don't go and put a whole list of skills that you cannot speak to, okay? Because when you come for an interview and I see there that you say you're a team player, and I'll ask you, give me an example or give me a scenario where you were a team player and you can't speak to anything, that's going to be worse than not having put something, than having left off team player at all, right? So make sure that whatever you put under your skills section or your strengths section are things that you can speak to, things that you can give examples of, because that's what's going to help you speak to some of the things that you've put there. You can have a separate achievement section if you are one of those overachievers that really has done so many different things and there's so many things to list. Have a section for achievements there, right? Then don't put it under the educational section, like I said. Have a section where you have achievements, and that's where you can then do a bullet point list of the achievements that you have that you want to speak to, okay? But really try keep it to achievements that are relevant and that, so don't, a lot of people, I see a lot of graduates putting their achievements from high school, right? In high school, in grade 9, this is what I did. You know, when you're applying for a job, we want mostly the achievements that you have at varsity level. You can put there that you were head girl at high school, but that's something that I would say, or head boy at school, that's something that I would put under the educational section under your high school. Then you just say, you know, you can put it there to say head girl or head boy or whatever the case may be. Don't go and list grade 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 achievements, right? This is not the space for that. Make sure that it's keeps to the things that you've done at university. If you're someone that is not active at university, I suggest you do 1 or 2 things to help you at university. And I'll speak about that a bit later as to how to get into a top law firm. And I'll tell you why that's important. So doing extracurricular activities is something that's absolutely necessary. And like I say, I'll explain why. Interests and hobbies is something you could put there if you've got something quite unique to maybe tell us about, because this section really gives me a better sense of who you are as a person and as an individual. There's a lot of people that I've interviewed over the years that maybe are, you know, doing provincial sport or something along those lines, right? So someone that's really doing something quite important and quite significant in terms of they've really achieved a lot in this particular sport or skill that they've done, definitely put it there, because that's something that's going to add a little bit extra into who you are and give us a better sense of you as a person. Now, references, I've just put it here, but it's really something that's not necessary at a graduate level, particularly because you haven't worked as yet. But I get a lot of graduates asking me, but what about references? What do I need to put there? References is something that you can leave off, because ultimately when you come in as a graduate in any organization, we don't do references on you. That's just the honest truth. So putting down references in a CV is not necessary, but if you have worked before and you do have a list of references or 1 or 2 people, maybe the store manager or whatever, you can put that there under a small little section under references, but not something that is a must. So if you don't have references, please don't stress about that at all. Okay. So guys, those are the sections that are important to have in a CV. Like I say, going through a CV template is another whole session on its own. but I have created a video that really speaks to that. And so you can go through that in more detail, but there is a way to get a one-pager. You guys should not be having 3 pages of a CV. Okay. Any questions just from a CV perspective before I move on to interviews and how to prepare for interviews?
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Ntombi.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great, thank you. So I just wanted to know with regards to the including of a picture, can it be a graduation picture?
Definitely. Definitely.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Graduation picture is absolutely fine. You can include it there. But like I said, don't do a full picture. Do something that's a bit up close that you can put on there that we can actually see your face, and let it be a pleasant picture, right? We don't want to see mugshots. So let it be a picture where you're actually smiling and looking happy. And that's absolutely fine if it's a graduation picture.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All I meant, guys, is that you're not going to put a picture of you on holiday, right? So it's not a social media profile picture. It's actually a professional place, or CV is a professional thing that you're going to send to corporates. So make sure that you look the part as well.
Hi, Bohlale, how are you?
Good, thanks, and you?
I'm good, thank you. I just wanted to ask with regards to customizing our CV for Bowmans, right? Yes. I wanted to ask how we can do that on Leaply, because I have used Leaply before, yeah. And yeah. I don't remember being given the option to customize, like for a specific law firm, because you have that section in your personal details where you write like who you are, you know, and that, I guess, all the law firms that use Leaply that you apply to can see that section. So you really can't customize for the specific law firm.
Yeah, so that's the only downside, I guess, with that, because whatever you've put in that section of yours is going to be seen by everyone. So that's the only time that I think it's appropriate to potentially then keep it generic to all law firms and not customize it. But for those of you that are applying to areas that are maybe not on a platform like Leaply, please make sure that you do customize it. I think one thing that we have had people do is put together a cover letter that's specific to Bowmans, and then they just add that with their CV as an attachment. And that's a separate attachment that they then put on with maybe all the other documents that we ask for. So we have had people do that to then just try and justify why it is they want to work at Bowmans specifically.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, no problem. Cool. Let me go through some key interview tips, guys, and then I'll take some more questions after that. I'm just cognizant that it's already 11:25. So in terms of being invited for an interview, guys, these are quite generic, interview tips that I think all graduates need to know about, because I've seen all sorts of people, come up to interviews really ill-prepared. And so these are tips that you can take with you to any interview. It doesn't have to be to a law firm, because law firms do different things. And as most of you will know, Bowmans, we have a 2-day interview process, right? And so this is just something that's going to help you prepare for interviews in general. So there's 5 key tips that I want to share with you guys from an interview perspective. And then I'll move on to what the differences are from a virtual interview perspective. So number 1, always prepare for your interview. It's absolutely important, guys, that as you go for an interview, you've done your research about the company, you understand exactly what it is you're applying into and how you fit into that role, right? And know the typical interview questions. There's some key interview questions that you know you're going to be asked. Tell me about yourself. What are some of your strengths? What are some of your weaknesses? You know, those are some typical interview questions that you can know to prepare for. Whether it comes up or not in the interview, at least you know that you're prepared for them, because those are questions that recruiters really use to try to get a better sense of you as an individual. So always make sure that you have researched the company and understood, what do I like about this company? Who are they in the market as a whole? What are some of their key strengths? Like, what are their values? What is the culture like there? And for some things that you don't know and you can't find on the internet, ask people that you know that maybe work here or that know people that work here, right? So do a bit of that ground research. It's going to be so important. But also, as you apply for something, don't be a serial applicant, right? There's a lot of people that just apply for jobs just for the sake of it. And then at the end of the day, you ask them, well, you applied for this role and you applied for that one, and they're really different. Where is it that you actually want to be? Apply for a role that you know is in line with where you want to go, so that whenever you asked why are you applying for this role, or why do you think you're the best person for this role, that you know how to justify that. So those are the key things just from a preparation perspective that I think you guys need to be aware of. Always arrive early, guys. If you are having an in-person interview, please always make sure that you are at least at the venue 10 to 15 minutes before. Never come late to an interview. Rather be the one that's waiting for recruiters to come to you than for a recruiter waiting for you. What that communicates is that you were just ill-prepared. It also communicates that you're someone that when you do start working are probably going to pitch up late for meetings, going to pitch up late for work. It really doesn't send the right message. And if you are stuck for some legitimate reason and you are running late, make sure that you, during that time, give a call to the recruiter to let them know. The worst is for you to try and give a justification after the fact when you're already 10 minutes late. Rather let us know so that we understand why it is that you are running late. So make sure that you're always leaving room for delays that may arise. Make sure that you always arrive at the venue, because that 10 to 15 minutes just allows you to calm down, right? I've seen a lot of candidates come onto our selection day and they're rushing in because they're so late and this happened and that happened, and they just start the day flustered, you know, and as they're going to one activity from another, it takes a long time for them to calm down, and so they don't apply their minds properly. So when you give yourself the leg room, you're really able to calm down and make sure that you're ready for the interview. Also, it also shows that you're taking the process seriously, okay? So arriving early, always very important. Dressing professionally is a no-brainer, right? So you don't pitch up for an interview just because you're coming off of campus, you come as you were dressed at campus, right? So you need to make an effort to dress appropriately and dress professionally. Dress as if you're going to work, right? A lot of people may not have all the different work outfits or whatever the case may be, but I think it's really simple. If you're a girl and you've got a decent dress that you can put on with maybe some kitten heels, then that's absolutely fine. Maybe put a blazer over it or something. Then that's absolutely fine. If you're a guy and you've got suit pants and a shirt, make sure your shirt is ironed, make sure you've got your suit pants on and formal shoes, absolutely fine. You don't need to have the whole shit, the tie and the blazer. If you've got all of those things, even better, put them on. But for those of you that don't, make sure that you at least have a tie on and an ironed shirt with formal pants, and you will be absolutely fine, because first impressions always count, guys. The way you come dressed says a lot about you as an individual and says a lot about how you're taking the process. So just make sure that you're also keeping things quite neutral, your hair is neat, and that you look presentable on the day. The next thing that I think is important, I always tell people, be yourself, right? And I know sometimes it's hard when you are interviewing because you become very nervous throughout the process, right? And you want an opportunity so badly that you end up just, you know, thinking too much and being in your head too much. I think a lot of graduates are like that, and you just want to impress so badly. But if you are able to show a level of confidence, and I always say this to graduates, confidence comes from being prepared. If you feel prepared for the interview, you'll come across a lot more confident, because as they ask questions and as you articulate yourself in the way that you've prepared, it builds your confidence as you're going throughout the interview. But if you start off and the first question I ask you is, tell me about yourself, and it's not something you've prepared, and you're umming and ahhing and, you know, talking around different things and realizing that you're losing the audience, that starts eroding at your confidence. And with every question that comes, even if you know the answer, you're already doubting yourself, right? So it's so important to build on your confidence, and that comes from being prepared, but also to show a bit of your personality. Don't assume that a particular environment wants a particular type of person, and so you come there and you're all prepared to be that kind of individual. No, I think it's important for you to try and be yourself and show a bit of your personality, because it's important. At the end of the day, you want to work in an environment that suits your personality, but you also want to be hired for who you are as a person. So always important for you to be yourself in an interview and bring your best self to the interview. Never lie or try to be someone that you're not. And by never lie, I've seen, and I've interviewed thousands of graduates, right? I've been in grad recruitment for over 10 years. And so I've interviewed thousands of grads, and some of them will then say, you know, some of their hobbies is reading. I'll be like, oh, really? You enjoy reading? What kind of books do you like reading? Right? And that's why I say to you, whatever you put on your CV, be able to justify it, whether it's a skill, whether it's a hobby, whether it's an achievement, because I could ask you anything that's on your CV and you need to be able to speak to it. So someone will say they absolutely love reading. Why? Because they assume that in law firms, you need to be a reader in order to be seen to be someone that's competent enough to work at a law firm. And so they'll say, oh, I love reading. And I'll say, what kind of books do you like to read? I like reading like self-help books. Yeah, just things to develop me. I'll be like, oh, okay, which is the recent one that you've read so far? Right? And then you kind of start seeing the mind is now ticking, they're now getting, oh, can I have a drink of water? And can I, and that's when you start seeing that someone's actually put together, they fabricated a whole story. And I did this with someone sometime last year. And so she couldn't tell me, she made up a name of some book. I then said to her, okay, who's the author of that book? Oh, no, I can't remember. I was like, okay, well, just give me in summary what you loved about the book. What did you learn from it? And it's at that point that she then said to me, you know what, ma'am, actually, I don't read and I don't like reading. So sorry that I lied about it. Sorry that I put it in my CV. I just thought that's possibly what you want to hear. Right? And she's not the first person that I've dealt with that's lied about one thing or another. So guys, don't try and make yourself something you're not. Be as authentic as possible, be yourself. But in that, what I'm asking you guys to really do is to take your career seriously from the time you're at high school. Make sure that you are developing yourself into being a well-rounded individual. Make sure you're getting involved in extracurricular activities. Make sure you're doing well on your academics. So that when you do present yourself as being who you are, that you actually can legitimately speak to core things and core skills that you've learned during the time you're at university. So that's what I mean by be yourself. Lastly, from an interview perspective, always ask questions, guys. They'll always ask you at the end of an interview, do you have any questions for us? Now, asking questions, it's important because it really shows that you have a keen interest in the company, you have a keen interest in the role. And so for you to sit there and say, no, actually, I don't have any questions, really shows a lack of like interest and enthusiasm for the actual role, right? And even if some of your questions have been answered throughout the interview, it's always important to have one or two key things that you could ask that I bet you have not been answered during your interview that you must prepare for. And so what I always say is one of the key things you can ask about is the company and the culture, right? It's always key for you to be able to ask someone, what is your experience of working at Bowmans? What do you love about Bowmans? How would you describe Bowmans culture, right? So that's something you can always ask any organization, and that person then gives you a sense of the culture from their perspective, not necessarily from what you've read on the website or what you've heard of other people, but someone gives you their perspective of working in that particular place. So that's something you can always ask. If you've read about something that's interesting in the newspapers or on the website that you want to get more information about, perfect time to be asking that question, right? Also, the other thing you can ask about is the actual role that you've applied for. What are some of the key challenges? What are some of the key expectations? You know, what are the first key things that you expect a candidate to need to really get to grips with within their first rotation, right? What are some of the key attributes that you guys look for in a winning candidate attorney, right? So ask about the role. You can ask about the company, the culture, the role. There's so many different aspects. So make sure you always have at least 2 to 3 questions that you've prepared for the actual interview that you can ask at the end, okay? And then one thing you can obviously always ask is, what are the next steps from here? What can I expect? When can I expect to hear feedback? Is there another round? And then the recruiter or the hiring manager will then explain that to you, okay? So those are the key 5 things that I think are always important for interviews. Be prepared for your interview, always arrive early, dress the part, dress for success, guys. Be yourself, and that comes from being prepared, and also always prepare some questions that you can ask. Okay, now let me just get straight into virtual interviews, and then I'll take a pause for some questions with regards to either CV or the interview section. So virtual interview, guys, you know, a lot of companies are still largely doing virtual interviews. And I think it's important for you to just be mindful of some of the things that you need to test ahead of time. I tell you now, when we went into lockdown last year, Within the first about 4 months or so, I had already done 150 virtual interviews with different students across the board. And there's so much that you guys, that students were just lacking in terms of understanding how to prepare, right? It's not a video call, guys. I see students, I dealt with a lot of students that were talking to me as they're walking, and they're kind of talking to the phone, and then they look around a bit and they come back to the phone. It's an interview, right? So even though it's virtual, and whether you're using your phone, whether you're using a laptop, make sure that you are still conducting yourself in the most professional manner possible, right? And the first thing you always need to do, make sure that you've tested your connection. So make sure wherever you're going to be plugging in from, there's good connectivity, you've got enough data to be able to do a virtual interview for that 30 minutes or for that hour. It's so, so important. Make sure that you've tested that ahead of time. But also make sure that you have found a quiet place for you to do your interview, right? So don't do an interview in the car, don't do an interview walking anywhere. Make sure that you're doing it hopefully in a room that you can just have to yourself, that's quiet, that's free from distraction, because it's so easy to see that you're distracted in a virtual interview. Sometimes you have family members walking up and down, coming in and out of the room that you're in, and then your eyes start gazing all over the place and it distracts you from actually just paying attention to the interview. So always make sure you've tested your connection, but you also found yourself a quiet space for that 30 minutes to be able to take part. Another thing that's always important that I actually haven't mentioned here, the lighting, right? The lighting is so important. Don't always face a window, always face where the light is coming in, right? So that I can actually see you. If you're sitting in front of your laptop and the window is actually behind you, what I end up seeing is just a silhouette. I don't actually see you, your facial features, anything like that. So make sure that ahead of time, you've prepared yourself and you've put yourself in an environment where the lighting is coming in from in front of you so that I can actually see you and see your face as I engage with you. Never have an interview with your video off. Yeah, always have your video on in an interview, because people need to see who they're speaking to. It's not a telephone call, otherwise we could have just called you on your phone. It's a virtual interview, and so make sure that you're always prepared to be on camera for your interview, right? Log in 10 minutes before to familiarize yourself with whichever app that you're going to be using. So whether it's a Zoom call, a Teams call. I know a lot of us by now are quite familiar with both of these, right? This was something that last year, this time, people didn't know the difference between the Zoom and the Teams and where to unmute yourself and where to switch your video on and off. And those are important aspects. But I know you guys have done quite a bit of online learning in the past couple of months, so you should be familiar with those features. So make sure that you're familiar with that ahead of time, and make sure that once again, you're early for your interview. Dress professionally all the time, guys. I don't care what you're wearing from the waist down, but from what I see on the actual video, make sure that from here up, you are dressed appropriately. I had a lot of students last year that were coming onto a virtual interview almost as if they've rolled out of bed, right? As if it's like, okay, this is an online class or something. And I was just like you ask yourself, did you bath? Like, did you take a shower this morning? Did you comb your hair? You don't look like you've combed your hair. You look like you're still in your pajamas, or you're still in your loungewear. Don't dress like that for an interview, guys. Always come across professionally for an interview. Whether you have your slippers and your pajama pants on, that's irrelevant. What I see needs to look professional all the time. Focus on the interviewer. I think what I mean by this is, a lot of times, particularly if you are on your phone and doing a mobile interview, I see a lot of people looking at themselves instead of actually looking at the interviewer. And this is very distracting. I see people then fixing their hair during the interview, fixing the hair, looking at themselves, fixing the lips, and wiping lip gloss or the lipstick or whatever the case may be. Focus, 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 right? During that time, the eye contact is still important. Just because the person is not sitting in front of you doesn't mean that you can now look all over the place. Make sure you're focusing on the interview at all times. And once again, always still be yourself, even in a virtual interview. Still try and show a bit of your personality there as well. Whew, I feel like I've raced through that. So any questions, guys, with regards to interviews or CVs? The next thing I'm going to get into is what are some of the key things to get into a top law firm? What are the things that I look for and that a lot of my colleagues look for in other law firms as well. But from an interview perspective, is there any question at this point?
Good morning. I would just like to ask, when they ask you, tell me more about yourself, how far back do you go? Do you say you've got siblings and elaborate on that, or is it more job-related specific qualities that you possess as a candidate?
Generally more job-related and specific qualities that you possess. I believe I've got a slide on this particular question because I do know it's one of the questions that a lot of people dread having to answer. So I think after speaking to getting into a top law firm, I then speak about, tell me about yourself, and I'll go through that in a bit more detail.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Anything else, guys?
Morning.
Yes, morning.
I'd like to ask, in regards to a cover letter, what are you looking for specifically?
Sure, yeah, a cover letter. So what we look for from a cover letter perspective is really almost similar to what I said in the profile, right? But you're going to expand on it a bit more. In the cover letter, what we're really looking for is a sense of, once again, who you are, what you're studying, why you're studying that, where you are studying it. Then in the second section, so that's in the first paragraph, it's almost an introduction of yourself. In the next paragraph, which is the body of the cover letter, what we typically look for there is what are some of your key achievements? What are some of your key strengths? And how do you see that benefiting the company that you're applying for, right? So in that section is where you really start to sell yourself in terms of, this is what I've done in my extracurricular time. These are some of my key strengths. These are some of the experiences I've gone through, and this is why I think they're beneficial to Bowmans. So in that section, you almost have to unpack, what value add am I bringing to the company that I'm applying to? What is it that they are going to want to see about me, or what is it that I need to tell them about myself that's going to help me differentiate myself from anyone else? So in this section, you're not putting generic words like I'm hardworking, I'm dedicated. Everyone's hardworking, and hardworking is relative, right? My level of hardworking could be very different from the next person. But what are some of the key things? And this is where you really need to understand the company and what it is you're applying to, because that's how you're going to start articulating how you meet that requirement. And what are some of the skill sets that you are bringing to the company to meet that particular requirement? So generally, if you've got a job spec for a particular role, you go through the key responsibilities of that particular job spec, and you then just tick off, what are the key things that I know I can do out of this role? Then you start speaking about, these are my core strengths, and this is where this is going to fit into the current role that I'm going into. And then in the last one, you almost, the last paragraph is typically your call to action. So it's almost you rounding up saying, so excited to have the opportunity. Thank you so much for reading the cover letter. So excited to potentially have the opportunity to be interviewed. Really looking forward to hearing from you via email or on my number, and this is the number, right? So the last section, you're almost wrapping things up and having a call to action. So that's typically how you'd break it up. But like I say, I have a video on specifically that will really give you some full detail as to how you break down those particular sections. But that's pretty much how you do it. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Perfect.
Hi, Bohlale.
Hello, Bibelo.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned activities in varsity in the first section of the Zoom call. So I was just saying, let's say when you're a varsity student, but you don't necessarily do activities that are within the varsity, is that also still okay?
Yes, that's absolutely fine. So like I said, even if you're just working time and it's not at the varsity, it's also, that's absolutely fine. Your activities don't need to be limited to the university. It's just that for those people that maybe are staying at res, it makes sense to have activities at the university instead of going out. But you can list anything. It doesn't have to be at the university at all.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Good morning, Bohlale.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, and yourself?
Good, thanks, Bohlale. Go for it.
Can I please ask, when is the best time for people studying BA Law, BCom Law to start applying for VAC work? Because I've had various people tell me that you should apply in the second year or the third year. So I just wanted to know which is the best time to apply for VAC work.
Okay, so getting into a VAC program. So if you're doing a straight LLB in your second year of LLBs, when you're supposed to be starting to do VAC, and at the end of your second year or sometime mid of your third year is when you're supposed to be securing articles. And I'm going to go through this in the next slide. So that's for straight LLB. If you're doing a BCom or a BA or any other undergrad, typically you start applying for your VAC program in your third year. So in your final year of undergrad is when you'll start applying, because you still have another 2-year postgraduate LLB qualification to still do after that. So I would suggest in your third year, early third year is when you start applying for VAC programs for the June-July section.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Is it aligned to what you've heard or different to what you've heard?
It is. It's very similar. Thank you.
Okay, happy.
Morning, Bohlale.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And yourself?
Good, thank you.
I have a quick question about selection day at Bowmans. So I've applied for the 2023 CA position, and I was just wanting to find out what the next step is, if you automatically just go into selection day now, if the company, takes interest in your application.
So if the company, if you've been shortlisted for selection day, we'll email you and let you know that we'd like to schedule you in for the next selection day. This is when it's going to be, are you available? And then you'll come back to us and let us know. So there isn't any other process in between you applying and you coming onto selection day. If you've applied directly for articles, the next process will be coming straight onto a selection day.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. No problem. I see a lot of the questions are more law related now. So let me just maybe go into this section and give you guys some tips around what it is that we actually look for from a legal perspective. So getting into a top law firm, guys, is highly, highly competitive. So just the legal industry as a whole is a very competitive industry when it comes to grad recruitment. And I say this coming off the back of, having worked at investment banks, having worked in the financial services industry. We hire 2 to 3 years ahead of time all the time, right? So as was mentioned just now, we're already hiring for 2024 now, this year. So 2023, 2024 is currently open. So if you're in your final year and you don't have articles, it's late in your final year. So in your penultimate year is when you really need to be starting to get articles. But I've seen people get articles in their second year of LLB as well, right? People that are proactive that maybe came to a VAC program in the June of their second year, and already before December, they've already got an offer of articles, right? So it's such a competitive industry. And one thing that you guys always need to realize is that as law students across the country, right, across the country, it's so important for you to have perspective of how many of you are actually graduating out of law school in any given year. There's thousands, right? And as top law firms, we typically take about 35 to 40 candidate attorneys annually. So if you already just do the math on that, right? If there's say 2,000 of you, hypothetically, 2,000 of you that are coming out, and every law firm is taking 30 or 40 people of the top 4 law firms, that's not a lot, right? It's hardly 200 people that we are taking, or just over 200 people that are then going to secure articles. And given that context, guys, it's so important for you to always understand what it is we're looking for from an application perspective in terms of your qualification, which, as I've said, you need to finish off an LLB qualification. I've had a lot of people say, well, I did a BCom law without the postgraduate, can I still get into articles? No, you need to have an LLB qualification in order to get articles. So that's one thing you must always know and be on track with in terms of, I need to get an LLB in order to get into a legal law firm. On top of that, what kind of marks am I getting? How am I setting myself apart, right? If there's thousands of people from all across the country, different 10, 12 different universities, all doing law and coming out in the same year, what am I doing to set myself apart? this is where academics comes in. I have a lot of students asking, oh, why do you guys only look at academics and why do you rate it so highly? Well, academics tells us one of three things, right? Doing well academically tells me either that you are absolutely passionate about what it is you're studying, so it comes naturally to really do well at it, or it tells me that you may be just someone that's naturally smart, right? You have people that are just book smart, they read things once or twice, and they can just regurgitate information. Naturally smart people. Or it tells me that you are just hardworking, right? You may not be naturally smart, but you really put in the hours to make sure that you're getting really good academics. And any company actually wants candidates that display any of those three qualities, guys. No one wants someone that's just cruising through university, right? But having said that, by me saying you need to do well academically, I'm not saying you need to have a 90% average. No, not at all, not at all. What I'm saying is doing well academically, if you've got an 80% average and up, you're already setting yourself up for at least being for an interview. That's just a fact, right? Whose thing is on, Melissa? Or is it Tebo? Someone's volume is, or mic is switched on. So by doing well academically, guys, really aiming to just get, even if you're getting like a 70% average, 75% average, that's okay, but that's almost a starting point. Because to be honest with you, what I've seen over the years that I've been at Bowmans, the academic average is actually increasing year on year. People are doing better and better with each year. So what we said previously, where we said 65% average is the minimum that you need, right now, there's so many people getting 65% average that we actually just looking at people with 75% average and up, because there's such a huge number of people already from 75% and up, right? And so typically we're always going to look at who are the guys that are doing well academically. Law is a very technical space. And so when you come in to know 50% of your work, 60% of your work is not what's going to help you come up with the most creative, right? And so typically in a top law firm where we are servicing some of the high-end clients in the country and multinationals, these are people that expect excellence from us, that expects perfection, that expect you to come up with creative legal solutions for the problems that they have. And they come with pretty complex problems, guys. They're not going to pay top dollar for lawyers at Bowmans for something that's simple that anyone else can do for them, right? So they come with pretty complex problems that they expect us to put our minds together and solve for them. So having really good academics, once again, shows one of those three things, but also it just tells us that you're someone that's going to be able to come in here and at least add value from the get-go. So academics is something we're always going to look at, and it also just helps as a filtering mechanism, right? If we've got a lot of people in the high end, we look through them first and make sure that we are getting some of the top academic students as well coming into the law firm, because that book smart is actually very important, particularly from a legal perspective. You guys know you read a lot and analyze a lot, right? But having said that, why we always say you also need to be well-rounded is that I've had people come in that are straight A students. I literally had a student, I think she was from Wits University or something, straight A's, right? With 1 B in her second year, which was her one failing in her whole university career in her mind. But had straight A's for everything else. She came onto our selection day, but because she's not well-rounded as an individual, that she wasn't a team player, she wasn't someone that dealt well with other people, was condescending in her manner, you know, spoke over other people, or displayed certain characteristics that we are just not looking for, we still said no. So just because we're looking for really good academics doesn't mean that that's all you need to have. And that's why I always encourage you guys, do extracurricular activities that are going to help you build skill set that is really going to help you just be a well-rounded person, right? If you've had a lot of opportunities to work in groups, to work in teams, to be a waiter, to be customer service facing or customer facing in any of your extracurricular things, then that's perfect. That's how you're going to build a skill set, guys, so that when you come onto a selection day, you're able to display some of those characteristics at a selection day, and that's going to be the winning formula. We'd much rather take someone that has a 70% average or a 65% average, but they have really high EQ, right? Their emotional intelligence is up here, how they communicate, how they articulate themselves, how they deal with other people, how they bring in other team members in a solution. That is someone that we want to be able to have in our organization. So academics and being well-rounded are things that are absolutely important for you to be thinking about and to be doing whilst you're at university. VAC programs, as I've already said, are also quite important. Not that you need to do a VAC program in order to get articles. Some firms are like that, right? Some firms say that you need to come through VAC program for you to get articles. With us, it's different. There's articles and there's VAC. If you want to come through on a VAC program, which I always advise, and only because I think it's important for you to get a sense of the company that you're coming in, to get a sense of the culture that you're going to be working for, that program helps you with that. It helps you interact and engage with people on a longer period, right? Whether it's a week or 2 weeks, whatever the case may be. So coming into VAC helps you from that perspective. But what I always say is that it's important for you to have at least had a VAC exposure at some stage. It doesn't necessarily have to be with Bowmans if you're applying to Bowmans for articles. Even if you have VAC at other places, that tells me that you're someone that's proactive, that's taken initiative, that's gone out of their way to really get a better feel as to what the legal industry is about and what law firms are really looking for. So going into VAC programs, guys, I think is important for you to just get further exposure into the industry, and also shows that you are keen and interested in this industry. But like I said, if you are coming straight into an article, a selection day with Bowmans, absolutely fine. You don't have to have a VAC program, but I'm just saying that's something that you need to be mindful of getting into as you go through your university career. So like I said, if you're an LLB in your second year, start doing VAC. By your third year, make sure that you've got articles. If you are doing an undergrad, by your third year, start doing VAC programs. Within your first year of LLB, postgrad, that's when you need to start getting articles, right? So VAC program in your third year, articles by your first year of LLB. Like I said, there's people that have done it even earlier than that, but I'm just giving you, that's pretty much where you need to be thinking. So getting into a top law firm, guys, is really a combination of all of those three things. I tell you about the competitiveness of it so that you have perspective as to why we assess people in the way that we do. I told you about the type of qualification you obviously need to have, always applying 2 to 3 years ahead of time. So if you know you're graduating in 2024, which means you'll start articles in 2025, by next year, you need to be applying for articles, because that's when our applications are going to start opening. Well, for us, that's when we're going to start opening for 2025. So always work back 2 to 3 years and make sure that you're applying in the year 2 years or 3 years ahead of time. Why marks matter? I went through that. Being passionate about the law. I spoke to that as why, you know, people that are doing well academically do demonstrate a passion for the law, but also as you come through for selection day, it's so evident when you are really passionate about the law, the questions you ask, the matters or the things that you are keeping track of, just in terms of what's happening, you know, what's happening, what are some of the cases that are happening currently, the things that you find interesting. That comes through when you are doing an interview, and that always speaks volumes, because we do want people that are naturally inclined to being a lawyer. And so those are the things that we typically look for as well. Okay, so those are the things in terms of getting into a top law firm. Those are the things that we typically look for. And if you guys make sure that you are always, you know, doing things ahead of the time that you're supposed to, and you're always prepared, I think you're really going to stand yourself in good stead, just in terms of making sure that you are coming out at the top. Lastly, let me see. Yeah, so this is the last one that I wanted to really just take a quick squiz through, and happy to after this. So tell me about yourself, right? This question you're always going to get asked at some stage in your interview. Tell me a bit more about who you are. Tell me a bit more, Melissa, about who is Melissa, right? So always start, I always say, always start with your professional summary, right? Start with a professional summary in the sense of, this is what I do, this is where I'm currently studying, this is why I'm studying it, and this is the reason why I've applied to being here, right? So it's important for you to go through why you've studied the course, what some of your career aspirations are, and what you've learned from your experiences. So if you've done extracurricular activities, don't just say, well, I've done moot, you know, I've been in moot competitions. Say that, you know, in my time during moot, this is really, I really learned the ability to work in teams because we're in this particular competition and this is what we did, da, 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 da. So whatever you're speaking about, tell us what you're learning from it. What are some of the strengths that you're gaining from it? Because talking through some of your key strengths and skills is going to be important for us, also just from a differentiating perspective. And then talk about a little bit about your interests as well. And throughout all of this, and that's why personality is the first thing there. Show your personality as you are speaking and as you're articulating yourself, okay? So don't be too robotic in your manner. Really try to show a bit of your personality. You speak to your strengths and skills, you speak to your interests, and then maybe at the end, you can tell us something that we may not know about you, or something that's in your CV that we may not have seen, right? Something that's going to be interesting. Because, and why I say this is because, you know, when you go through interviews like I do, and you may be seeing 20 people a day or whatever the case may be, after a while, you almost need to remember someone by something. They need to have said something that you remember, the way in which they interact, the type of question, maybe they're asked a very interesting question at the end of the interview. There needs to be something that's going to make you memorable as a person, right? Otherwise, if you are coming in and you're telling me that you're hardworking and that you're determined and that you want to be a lawyer because it's a good profession to have and you're going to make lots of money. I mean, I know those are legitimate reasons, but those are not the reasons to be citing at an interview. Those are not necessarily the first things that you need to be talking about at an interview. So make sure you've thought through how you're going to answer this question, because it really is because it's the first question we ask. That's how you're going to set the tone. How are you going to set the tone for the rest of the interview? By how you answer this question. I always tell people, don't feel too shy to actually write down your points and practice them at home, right? Imagine someone asks you and actually practice what it is you're going to say, how you're going to say it. What are the key 2 or 3 strengths that you're going to mention? What are the 2 activities that you're doing at varsity that you're going to mention that are relevant? How are you going to tie that into why you are actually applying for that particular role? And then say something interesting about you that you can kind of end off with. So that's really a great way of us just unpacking how to answer the question, tell me about yourself. Make sure to bring a lot of yourself to the table. Make sure to also just give us a better sense of your personality through that discussion as well. Okay. Sorry, guys, I feel like I raced through absolutely everything, but I hope that you guys have been taking down some notes. And like I said, guys, I have a YouTube channel where I've put together, and I only started it this February. And it's because I get asked the same questions you guys are asking now, the same questions over and over and over again. And I just thought let me rather just put it together on a YouTube platform that you guys can actually go through. I've just put 6 thumbnails here of things that you can immediately go to off the back of what we've discussed today. Applying to a top 5 law firm, interview, virtual do's and don'ts, tell me about yourself, CV writing, CV templates, best questions to ask at the end of your interview. And I've really just put it there so that you know that you can go back to these videos and prep for yourself as you're going to various interviews in the near future. So I hope that was really helpful, guys. I'm happy to take more questions up until you guys need to jump off. It's already 12. I've got maybe another 10, 15 minutes for any burning questions that you guys may have. But once again, thank you so much for having me. It was really a great pleasure to be able to share all of this information with you.
Hello, Sis Bohlale.
Hello.
I hope you're good. I just have one question, and I hope I'm going to phrase it in a way that you'll understand. I just want to know, what are the common mistakes that we make when we are applying, especially on Leaply, when answering the questions that you guys prescribe for us? Like, what are maybe the common mistakes that you like to advise that we always make? Because I've been applying at Bowmans, and I get rejected, and now I'm like, I wonder what is it that I'm doing.
So I don't think rejection is not always a sign of you doing something wrong, right? To give you a bit of perspective, we probably get about 3,000 applications for a particular year. And like I say, we take about 40 candidate attorneys with each year. So it just means that the more that people are applying to Bowmans, the higher the stakes in terms of the number of people that we are able to see. So sometimes a rejection, typically a rejection, maybe we're looking at your academic average, maybe it's not meeting the threshold, or particularly if there are no extracurricular activities that are cited on there, and we've got people that are getting high marks with extracurricular activities, we'd want to see those candidates first. So rejection could mean maybe just not meeting one of the basic criteria that we look for, or could just mean that we are full by the time that you apply. Some people apply quite late in the process, particularly people that maybe leave it until the last 2 weeks of April to apply for our VAC program. By mid-April, we're already pretty full for VAC program because people have been applying since February. So it could be a lot of different things. And I think the typical things that we see is late application, but also maybe academic average not being as high, there not being extracurricular activities, but also just a lack of attention to detail. That's also something that we look at when people apply. Lack of attention to detail, or lack of being able to really articulate yourself well enough on your CV as to why we should be choosing you. Those are the things that we look at, and those are the things that we look through in determining who we're going to call onto a vacation program or a selection day.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
All right, my dear, no problem.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. You've already given us so much. Thank you for that. But as an award-winning graduate recruiter, you obviously must have an award-winning eye. So the question that I do have is, what makes an outstanding candidate? Bowmans candidate.
From an interview perspective or from an application perspective? Interview. Application,
interview, employee.
Oh man, okay. So I can tell you now, there are people that I've gone through on Leaply. I don't go through Leaply anymore. My team does, but in the beginning I used to go through Leaply myself, and there were specific people that as I read through their application, I just thought this is a no-brainer, right? There are people that I would even email myself and just say, hey, I've just seen your application, absolutely love it, would really love to engage with you soon. Can we have a telephonic call tomorrow? And those are people that, man, you can just see that from the time they were in high school, right? They've got high school achievements. They've got really good marks from a matric perspective. They're continuing to do well from year one at university, doing really well academically. And you can see they're consistently doing better and better. And that for me is always telling, because as the years go on, it actually gets harder and harder, right? Your first year is actually the easiest year, I think, of your academic career. And so if people are able to stay consistent with their marks, or increasingly get better with the marks that they have at university, that is really something that's important to me. And then when I see that you are part of leadership opportunities, or you've taken on leadership activities, you've taken on team-related activities, and you've been in customer-facing kind of role where you have to deal with clients or customers, whether you're waitressing or you're doing some sort of part-time job, that for me always blows my mind, right? Because when I see people that are able to hold down a part-time job, do 1 or 2 extracurricular activities at university and still get really good marks, that for me is a no-brainer. So that for me is a winning application. And then on top of that, you know, how you articulate that about me section, that intro of yourself, says a lot about you. It says a lot about the way that you think, right? A lot of people are quite lazy when it comes to that. So that's why I keep saying, don't just say I'm a hardworking, I'm determined, I love the law because it's going to give me a great opportunity. That for me doesn't take a lot of thinking to put that together. You could copy and paste it from somewhere. But people that are quite thoughtful about how they construct that, and it really gives you a sense of who they are as a person, that's another area for me that I'm just like, I want to see this person because it intrigues me. And I actually want to interview you and get to know you better. Now, when you come for an interview, what makes your winning candidate at an interview is just having such a pleasant disposition. That for me is winning all the time. And for a Bowmans person, that is winning. Those are the type of people we look for at Bowmans. So have a pleasant disposition about you. Be friendly, be engaging. And being friendly and engaging doesn't mean you need to be an extroverted personality, not at all. You could be the shyest person in the room, right? But even in your shyness, when you then engage one-on-one with someone, you just come alight and we see your personality and you come across as a really decent, nice person. That is massive here at Bowmans, right? We don't look for people that are going to be climbing all over each other, trying to beat the other person at all costs. We don't look for those kinds of personalities. So being a genuinely nice person, smiling, being pleasant, when you're doing team activities equally, you know, how are you adding value to the conversation? How are you drawing on what your other team members have said? That for us is key. But also, you know, as you do your various activities, how are you bringing your best self to the table, right? So we need to be able to see that you are authentic in your engagement and you're not just doing this because you feel like it's something that you need to put on, an act that you need to put on. You need to be engaging and you need to be authentic in doing that. And that for us, obviously coupled with being able to answer the technical questions pretty well. That's what our partners are there for. They'll ask you lots of different technical questions and being able to just articulate yourself. And even if you stumble and you get something wrong, not beating yourself up about it, you know. We understand that we're not looking for the perfect answer, but we're looking for an ability to think, an ability to do problem solving, right? So toss with things in your mind, go through different things, suggest different things, but come back a lot more thoughtful. Those are the key things from an application perspective and an interview perspective that for us is then a no-brainer. So once we say, at the end of the 2 days, we sit with all the partners and we decide on candidates. And once we say someone is a no-brainer, we don't even discuss that person even further because we just know there's consensus across the room. This person is a no-brainer. We're inviting them, we're giving them articles, and we don't need to discuss it any further. Once you're here as a candidate attorney, the one thing that's going to make you definitely get retained here at Bowmans is a willingness to just work hard, right? Work hard and be adaptable and flexible to different personalities. We have a rotational system here at Bowmans, and so every 6 months you get to rotate to a different area in the firm, and every area you go to, you have a performance review at the end of that. And people that you work with just need to be impressed. People that you work with need to be saying things like, sure, you know, this person is just, they go out of their way, they go the extra mile. They're here on weekends when we have like a big trial or something important happening. They do work without complaining at all, right? They do it with a pleasant disposition. Once again, it's coming back in again. Those are the type of people we look for. Pleasant about the kind of work that you do, irrespective of how small it is. One thing you guys don't realize is that as you come in as graduates, some of you come in thinking, well, you know, I've studied for 5 years and, you know, I didn't study all this time to come and do paper punching, or I didn't study all this time to come and make files, right? But what you don't actually realize is that making files, making a bloody good file will make sure that you are actually getting even more substantive work. Being able to do the little things and the administrative things really, really well, that's what's going to give the business confidence to say, well, actually, if she can do a file that well, let me give her something more substantive. Let me give her something more complex. Those are the people that grow. The people that are complaining about doing small things and dragging their feet and whatever, no one is going to give you any more to do because you can't do the basic things well, right? So the attitude that you bring to your work is absolutely important. I've had people here at Bowmans now that are smashing absolutely every rotation. Why? The attitude they bring to their work is absolutely phenomenal. They make sure that when they are given an opportunity or they're given feedback to say, you're doing this wrong, next time don't do this, don't do that, they're not sulking about it and deciding not to do any more work or deciding to do less and less work. No, they actually take that on. And the next time they attempt something else, you can see they've incorporated those changes into it. Learn, be hungry to learn, bring the right attitude. And I promise you, then the sky's the limit. Really, really, really. And those are the same people that will then escalate when they get to associate level. Instead of being an associate for 3 years, within 2 years, you're already considered for senior associateship. And when you get to senior associateship, already within 2 years, you've been considered for partnership. There's other people that stay senior associate for 4 or 5 years, right? The difference is the attitude that you bring to the table. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you so much. I have a test now at 12:30, and you've already given us so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No problem at all, guys. No problem at all. Any other questions from anyone else that's still here?
Yes, Bohlale?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. I was wondering, what personal characteristics do you think we should be developing as students that will actually prove useful as a candidate attorney?
Personal characteristics?
Or just things that you think we should be working on that, you know, come out when people are practicing.
Okay. So the things that I think are important from a personal characteristic perspective, I've already mentioned things like communication, right? So being able to communicating effectively is an absolutely important skill that you need to learn as a student, as is now. Because when you come into a working environment, what you don't realize is that you now are coming in and you've got peers, you've got associates, senior associates, partners, right? The ability to manage up and communicate effectively, whether you've got capacity, you're running on time for a project, or whether you're a bit delayed, you've got competing tasks that have been given to you that you still need to be delivering on. Which partner do I go to? Who do I delay? How do I communicate that? Being able to communicate and being able to communicate confidently, that is something that's important that we definitely look that is important for you guys to start learning to do now as you kind of grow into being a candidate attorney. The other thing that I think is important, being someone that's reliable, I think is absolutely important, right? So someone that sticks to their word. If you say you're gonna do something, make sure that you show up and you do it, right? That's an important skill for you to be learning already now, because the more reliable you are, the more people have the faith to be able to give you work, even if it's something that's absolutely important to them that you need to be able to get done at a particular time. Time management is very important. The more you can juggle a lot of different moving things and make sure that you're still getting things done at the best and the best quality possible, then that is a winning thing. Because when you come into corporate, there's never a day where you're just going to get one task, right, for the whole day and for the week. You're going to get one task today, have someone call you towards the end of the day, ask for something else that's due the very next morning. Being able to manage your time and know when to do what and how to effectively use your time on the tasks given to you is going to be absolutely fundamental. So time management, I think, is absolutely critical. And that's why, you know, when I was asked about what is a no-brainer candidate for me, is someone that if you're doing extracurricular activities and you're working and you're doing academics and you're still doing well at those, and you've still got achievements, like that for me just says, sure, your ability to juggle and manage many different things is absolutely excellent. So those are the things that I think are important. Being able also to listen and be willing to be a problem solver yourself. Yeah, don't be the kind of person that's wanting to get handouts all the time. So someone gives you an instruction and within 2 minutes you're back saying, oh, but I didn't understand this. What do you mean by this? Oh, are you asking that I must go here first and then I must? Don't be someone that's just wanting. You don't want someone that's going to just be giving you every single step of the way. Be proactive. They give you an instruction, go think about it, go try different things, find a solution, come back saying, this is where I am, this is how far I am I on the right track, right? So being that kind of person, I think, is something that's going to be important for you, and the type of skills that I think are important for you to start developing now. And listening well is going to add to that as well.
Thank you so much for your feedback.
No problem, no problem. Guys, unfortunately, I also need to head out. But thank you all so much for being on today. And thank you for the wonderful questions that you guys have asked. Like I say, you know, DM me, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, I generally respond pretty quickly on there, but so much more information on the YouTube channel as well, if you want to just go through that in a bit more detail. But wishing you guys everything of the best. Please go all out. There's many people during COVID that are using COVID as a reason why they're not getting good marks, but I've equally seen many people absolutely thrive throughout COVID because of COVID, saying that, well, I'm at home, there's nothing else I can do but study. So always have a positive disposition about where you are and make sure that you're doing the best that you can in your current situation to make the most of your future career. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks, Naledi. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for all the messages. Much appreciated. Have a good week.